And we are back on politics tonight. South Korea says it will retaliate for a North Korean nuclear test by resuming cross-border propaganda broadcasts that the North considers an act of war. Well, the South's broadcasts are meant to undermine the leadership of North Korea's ruling Kim family. North Korea claims it carried out a successful hydrogen bomb test. The Obama administration trying to verify that claim. U.S. intelligence gathering aircraft have been taking off from an American airbase in southern Japan, and it's not clear what they're doing, but the aircraft is typically used to verify arms treaty compliance. Well, Professor Robert Shapiro from St. Xavier University joining me tonight to talk much more about that and about a lot of more things. He's over at Tribune Tower. Professor Shapiro, always good to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Good to see you, Paul. Happy New Year.
So last night, Congressman Foster was with me on the show, said we're not quite sure what we were dealing with over there, but I'll just get your perspective. How critical is this test? You know, everybody's talking about Iran and all the issues over there, and all of a sudden North Korea rears its head again. How critical is this event?
Well, if they actually have a hydrogen bomb, that would be a major advance in their weaponry. A hydrogen bomb is so much more powerful than the atomic bombs and the relatively weak atomic bombs that they've had so far. So that would be a little bit of a game changer in terms of the actual armaments involved. But make no mistake about it, this was first and foremost something that Kim did in order to enhance his own leadership. I mean, he led up to this with a note that he issued about what was going to come and whatever. And this is an attempt by him in some way, shape, or form to demonstrate his own power with respect to his domestic audience.
Secretary of State John Kerry did a presser today. At one point, he was asked, my words, not the reporters, but essentially, was the United States prepared for this? Why, you know, we've been dealing with other issues, and here North Korea rears its head. We weren't even aware. Of course, Secretary Kerry made it very well known that there are meetings about North Korea. How surprised do you think the U.S. government was with this event, whatever it turns out to be?
Yeah, I think there was a great deal of surprise. I mean, there shouldn't have been too much surprise, as I said, because Kim issued this statement in December. But our attentions have been focused elsewhere. And one of the things that North Korea is very good at doing is coming out and doing these things at a moment that people are least expecting them. You may notice there's been a certain rapprochement between South Korea and Japan. And he's clearly, in addition to bolstering his own position, he's clearly trying to do something to catch everybody's attention. And the real question is, what is he going to now try to demand in order to cut back, or supposedly cut back, on his armament of his own people and his armaments?
Is the United States the key factor in terms of having to address this? I'm thinking countries like China, who has so much trade with North Korea. North Korea really depends on them. They're really the ones that have to lead here, although I'm sure the United States will be right with them.
Well, I think that's true. I think it's been the perception of almost every administration that's come along since way back into the 80s that the key here is China, because China has the ability to control North Korea for the very reason that you mentioned. The Chinese, as you may know, expressed real concern about what had happened. They're not always able to actually control things, and they're not always willing to do so, because I think they can take the measure of what it is that North Korea will do, and they'll give them a certain amount of freedom, a certain leash, and then maybe try to rein them back in. But the one thing about the North Koreans is that they really follow their own lights in many instances.
Let me stay international with you, but shift topics a little bit over to Saudi Arabia, where, of course, 47 men were executed recently, several beheaded, and some apparently for simply saying bad things about the government. You know, we know that Iran's the bad guys and North Korea's the bad guys. Saudi Arabia, well, they're our friends. And something like that happens, there should be outrage. But yet, we seem to be quiet about it.
Well, this was a very provocative act, I will say, that the Saudis engaged in, and provocative towards Iran, and also provocative otherwise. The Saudis, as you may know, over the last many months, with the change of kings and different positions in the royal family, the Saudis have become a great deal more aggressive. There's always the underlying controversy of Sunnis and Shias. There's also the underlying controversy about which entity, Iran or Saudi Arabia, is going to be the sort of leader in the Middle East.
But my brief question here is, can the United States act, or are we so afraid of Saudi Arabia and the relations there that we just can't really do anything like sanctions or yell at them or anything else we might want to do?
Well, what we're trying to do is be the honest broker, and I'm not sure that works, because I think what the Saudis are also now demonstrating is that they don't rely upon the United States to the same extent as it did previously. The Saudis were more quiet than the Israelis, but they were very, very upset about the Iran deal, and I think they view this as a sign that the United States is no longer a reliable ally. So we're trying to broker a kind of peace between Saudi Arabia and Iran, where we may very well have been part of the reason, only part of the reason that this happened, and by trying to broker things, we may actually be making things worse with our ability to influence the Saudis. The Saudis have really stepped out now.
Let me come back.
Decided that they want to take an aggressive position.
Let me use less than our minute left. Come to gun control and the president's efforts, his executive orders. Republicans say he exceeded his authority. President doesn't think so. The Congress can control the purse strings here, right? Is that ultimately what has to happen there? Congress would have the guts to not give him the funding he needs for more programs?
Well, it's going to be hard for Congress to say we're not going to give you more money for various agents and whatever, because you may have heard that the Speaker of the House said, well, why don't we just enforce the laws? And of course, President Obama said, well, that's what I'm trying to do. The biggest problem here is that this is mostly symbolic. It's not going to have a major impact anytime soon. President Obama himself acknowledged this, saying that probably these things will not go into effect during his presidency because there'll be litigation and the like, people dragging their feet. It's a symbolic gesture. It's not unimportant. But the real work that has to be done is not just with Congress, but at local communities, in cities, in states, whatever, to try to change the way in which people understand this, the culture, and whatever. There's real hard work that has to be done.
No question.
This may be a nice tip-off, but it's not the work itself.
It's an effort that's been on the president's agenda from day one, and he wanted to do something before he left office. Professor Robert Shapiro from Xavier University, always good to see you. We'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Good to